Welcome. This is our Weber County Commission meeting on this, the 6th day of July, 10 o'clock. We're glad to have you here. This is the Weber County Board of Commissioners. Seated to my right is Commissioner Scott Jenkins. Seated to my left is Commissioner Gage 4. I'm Commissioner Harvey. Our Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by Gary Myers. Our invocation by Mr. Cortland Erickson, and then I'll have the thought of the day. Mr. Myers?
Please stand. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful to be gathered in a place of relative peace and prosperity. We're thankful for the chance we've had to celebrate Independence Day. We're thankful for those who founded this great country and established principles to allow us to thrive. And we're grateful for all those who, through the years, have worked so hard and even fought and given their lives to preserve our freedoms. We pray that those who are in positions of leadership and influence today will be wise in preserving the freedoms that we enjoy so that our nation and our county can continue to prosper. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Commissioners, a lot of things come to mind today with regards to thoughts. I couldn't help but to think, and by the way, we extend a special invitation to those who are here from our assessor's office. Thank you for joining us today. You're welcome every week. We're here at 10 o'clock each week, and just in case some of you are interested anyway. You know, in my lifetime, when I was younger, I played the drums. Especially the younger, it was the snare drum, and so I did a lot of rat-a-tat-tat and cadences and things pertaining to marches and things with the flag ceremonies and different things along the way. And in or around the 7th grade, I was invited by the state Democratic Party to participate in their big state convention. And that was when Jimmy Carter was, the Jimmy Carter times.
That explains everything.
Well, should. And where I'm kind of going with that, though, is I brought home some buttons and things like that, and that was a neat experience. I'd never been involved in a political party ever before, and think about it. When you're 12 or 13, how many 12, 13, 14-year-olds do you see at political functions? Those of us who go through that process, or whether you're a delegate or elected official or anything. And I was quite taken aback by it. I kind of I didn't really understand politics and didn't understand how things were going in the country, but I always found it a little fascinating there, and I watched with interest. It made me pay attention a little more as we were introduced to a certain kind of jelly beans. After that, we were also introduced to, the country was introduced to Billy Beer. Remember that from his brother? But I always watched with interest, too, how he, our leader of our nation, treated his wife. And as I was driving him to work today, they're celebrating their diamond anniversary, or their 75th wedding anniversary this week. And I thought, I thought that was kind of nice, just to put a kind of a snapshot on different things. But my thought more pertained to, I don't know why I mentioned that, but my thought pertained more to celebrations with regards to the 4th of July. We had an opportunity, all of us had an opportunity to participate in the 4th of July, representing the county in parades across the different areas, and whether it was Marriott Slaterville or Huntsville or Plain City or Far West, or a number of different things, and seeing the people there and happy and waving or smiling, and for the most part, in fact, I don't remember one jeer. And we were at, I had, just for all of you to know, I had the privilege of being with Plain City's own student body president, favorite son, Scott Jenkins, and boy, they came out in the droves. And next time I'm going to record on my phone that, because there's a lot of good stuff I can get on Scott from just the crowds yelling at the street. But what a great experience. And hopefully old Commissioner Jenkins came with these sacks that are just full of candy, just weighted down like he was going to the gym carrying kettlebells. And we threw out candy and just shower. These kids would go everywhere. It was really fun. We had a great experience. And he'd keep things loaded. And boy, when we both got out of our seats, there's just probably about as much candy in the car as there was outside the car. It was just really a fun experience. And I'm grateful we live in a nation where we have the freedoms we enjoy, where we can throw candy and see people and have them laugh and fun and get together as families. And what a great privilege we enjoy, that we can get together with our loved ones and friends and family and celebrate things that are good and pure and right. And I'm grateful for those freedoms and those who defend our freedoms and those who pioneered in the first place that we would have those freedoms and not be oppressed by anything that would be tyrannic in nature. Those are my thoughts today, Commissioners. Thanks for letting me just reflect a moment. Before, Commissioners, we go to, well, let me go. Now I'll do this first. Before we go to our public comments, I'm going to ask one of the great assessors in the land, John Ulibarri, to come forward. You know, we have what's called the Stall of Fame, and from his office there will be a recipient of this said Stall of Fame. As much as we love having your staff here and would love to hold them for the next 90 minutes, couple of hours, which I'm sure they all would really enjoy.
They do enjoy their meetings.
I think we'll see a max exodus when you're finished. But go ahead, Mr. Ulibarri, if you'd please announce this Stall of Fame winner.
Thank you, Commissioners. Happy to nominate Aaron Miles for the Stall of Fame. Aaron has shown a great deal of growth while he's been with our office over the past few years. One of these days, I'm going to have to tell you about Aaron's interview and why he wants to fly. The reasons for Aaron's nomination, of course, he of course works hard. He does a good job, and he's very earnest in his duties, like everybody from the assessor's office really is. We have a great staff. And what sets Aaron apart, though, is his willingness to participate. He works on various extra committees, and he's continually trying to improve. As you know, in our office, we have a licensing requirement, and Aaron's just very diligently worked hard since he's been with us to get his license. And now he's working on his commercial appraiser license, and he's put in a ton of time with that. But really, what I'm most proud of with Aaron is what kind of person he is. We always strive to hire good people. That's our first criteria when you want a job in the assessor's office is we look at you and we judge you on whether we think you're a good person or not. And I don't mean necessarily what church you go to or, what your morals are, but, how do you treat your fellow human being? Do you treat them well? Do you offer respect to people? Do you treat the customer well, even when they don't necessarily deserve it at that particular moment? And Aaron does all of these things. So to sum that up, I'm very happy to nominate Aaron for the Stall of Fame. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's give Aaron a round of applause. Aaron, come on forward, would you please? do you have anything you'd like to respond? This is a wonderful opportunity. Without retaliation, you may respond to Mr. Uleberry's claims or say anything, and then we'd like to present you with the coveted keychain and, more importantly, the parking stall closest to the door for the next little while. So anything you'd like to say, Mr. Miles?
Just like to thank John. He has a good sense of humor, and like to joke back and forth about a lot of things. But just thanks for the honor.
Thank you. Stay here. We'll get a picture of you two. Commissioner, let's sit down.
Just love telling that story.
I do love telling that story. It's a good story.
Congratulations. You bet. Congratulations. You get the coveted star. Oh, right in the center. Yeah. Here we go. Coveted star keychain. Right here. This goes to you. I'll just kind of hook it. Let's hook it so you can just keep it on the right finger. If I have any misinterpretation. Come on in here. COVID shot. You know, Ricky used to be our own Ansel Adams at one time. Nobody knows who that is. Thank you, John. All right. Thanks, guys. There they go. I feel like Pharaoh as Moses leads the people out of Egypt. We'll now move to item E like echo, Commissioners. On our agenda, are there anyone here left in the audience that would like to address the Commission? Is there anyone online that would like to address the Commission on agenda-related comments? Christy? Shelley? Hearing none, we'll move, Commissioners, to item F. Commissioners, item 3, for the approval of the minutes for June 29th, we will hold those. Our first item is the item request for approval of warrants 4050 to 4073 and 459,954 through 460091 and 103 and 104 in the amount of $799,656.80. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $107,572.62. Again, item 3 is held. Item 4 is a request for approval of ACH payments to U.S. Bank for our credit cards, $169,865.85. Item 5 is a request for approval of new business licenses. And item 6 is a request for approval of new beer licenses. Commissioners, questions? Mr. Jenkins, Commissioner Frohr?
Oh, I'm good.
Our very own clerk auditor, Ricky Hatch. Will you give us a little more information pertaining to these, please?
You bet. Middle name is Ansel. So,
Ansel. Thank you.
Commissioners, today or this week we issued 13 purchase orders for $108,000. 42% of that amount, or $45,000, pertains to the county fair, almost exclusively for advertising, but also the purchase of T-shirts. 28% or $30,000 is for Parks and Recreation, and that will go towards replacing a condensing unit. 9% or $10,000 is for the conference center to go towards contracted labor. As far as warrants, we issued 161 warrants this week for $800,000. One-fourth of that amount, or $202,000, were ramp awards, a $200,000 ramp award to Weber State University. 14% or $111,000 is for the county fair, which was for entertainment and attractions at the fair. 9% or $75,000 is for insurance for employees, primarily dental insurance. 8% or $61,000 is for the elections office, and that is printing and postage for the primary, which will be paid for by the municipalities and special districts that are holding primary elections. 7% or $54,000 is for the library. That will go, or was for building maintenance, as well as books, materials, and utilities. And then 5% or $44,000 is for the paramedic fund to purchase extrication equipment.
Does that jog your memory or cause any questions, commissioners? If none, then I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent items, item F.
I have a motion for approval.
Second.
Does that also hold item 3?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion and a second. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number G is an ordinance. This is a request for approval of the final reading of an ordinance of the County Commissioners, Weber County, amending the fees for the Ogden Eccles Conference Center and Perry's Egyptian Theater. Our presenter will be Miss Jennifer Graham today. Miss Graham?
Thank you. I'm covering for Cassie as she's got some well-deserved time off today. So, yes, this is our second reading to have our ordinance changed. This is the ordinance that Cassie and her new director of sales, Monica Anderson, have been through to just check out the fees. As you recall, Cassie mentioned that they added all of the AV fees as we are up and running with our AV department and have been for a while, as well as kind of getting rid of the sliding scale and putting a more consistent discount in place that is based off of your catering and food and beverage.
Commissioners, questions for Miss Graham regarding this second reading? No questions. I appreciate, again, your being more fair and always making improvements to what is already a great center over there. Commissioners, this will be ordinance 2021-22. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve ordinance 2021-22, which is the final reading of the ordinance of the County Commissioners of Weber County amending the fees for the Ogden Eccles Conference Center and Perry's Egyptian Theater.
Great.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. I'll place that motion for vote. Go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
Commissioner Frower,
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins,
Aye.
Chair Harvey.
Aye, thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Graham.
you.
Our next one is a request for approval of this is a resolution, 27-2021 of the County Commissioners of Weber County, authorizing the filing of cross appeals for the 2021 centrally assessed properties. Mr. Erickson, great to have you here.
Thank you, Commissioners. Each year, as you know, property taxpayers who own certain businesses that cross county lines or otherwise by statute are assessed by the tax commission, they have a chance to appeal their assessments. They have that chance between May 1st and August 1st. When they file an appeal, counties have the opportunity to join as parties through doing what's typically called a cross appeal. That allows counties to participate in the litigation that goes forward on those appeals. We have 60 days after the taxpayer files an appeal to file our own cross appeal or join that appeal. So in this year, so far, Pacific Corp and CenturyLink have already filed appeals. Pacific Corp filed on about May 21st. So if Weber County wants to become a party, join that appeal, we have until July 20th to file. So we have this resolution today as authorization, if you choose to allow the Attorney's Office to file a cross appeal, join as a party in both the Pacific Corp and CenturyLink appeals. It's pretty likely that other taxpayers right around the August 1st deadline will file their own appeals, so I may be back in front of you in a month or two with a second resolution to take care of those others that we don't know who they are yet. But if this is something that you would like to do, this resolution will accomplish that.
Comments, Commissioners? Commissioner Frohr?
Question, if I might, Mr. Chair. So, Cortland, explain the benefit to the county for us to do a cross appeal on the central assessed. I just want to make sure the members of the public understand why we would do this.
Yes, the property tax division within the tax commission is who issues the assessment, but the counties are impacted by the assessment because that is where the revenue goes. And so if one of these taxpayers files an appeal, the counties have an opportunity to jointly support the value that the property tax division assessed. And the property tax division would typically also participate in that. But we put, our resources together, put on a united front to make sure that these values are fair and that they are upheld if they are correct. Occasionally there's something legitimate that needs to be fixed, but otherwise one of these centrally assessed taxpayers might conceivably fight the appeal without much opposition. And so by making sure we participate, we have a seat at the table in order to evaluate any settlement offers, anything that's going on in the litigation, to protect the interest that we have in the revenue that comes into the county through these taxes.
So really what we're saying here, Cortland, is this is in the best interest of the taxpayers of Weber County to be involved with this, and really gives us a seat at the table, no different than an appeal process that an individual has on to come to the county and make an appeal, but we're working with other counties because it is a centrally assessed property.
That's right.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrar. Commissioner Jenkins.
So Cortland, I didn't respond to your email when you questioned on this. I figured we'd talk about it later. The question I have is, I value your opinion in this kind of stuff. And you give us the statement of the fact, but you didn't give us your opinion. And I was anxious to get that. Do you think we should be involved in this?
I think, you're asking my personal opinion.
I did.
The counties that are impacted by this, it does make sense to pay their fair share in defending, because there are some costs that arise in terms of hiring experts to defend the values that were set up or that were assessed. It shows solidarity, unity among the various counties that are involved. There could be a perception that if we don't join the appeal, we're getting a free ride on the shoulders of the counties and others who do participate. And that's maybe more of a political question than a legal one. But even from a legal standpoint, it does show, again, the solidarity, the unified voice among the counties who do seek to have the proper valuation upheld when it gets before the tax commission. So it makes sense to me.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioners, now that you've had a chance to comment, would either of you like to make a motion regarding Resolution 27-2021?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve Resolution 27-21, which is the, it's the authorization to join the litigation on the central assessed fees.
I have a motion for Resolution 27-2021.
I'll second that.
In a second, I'll place that motion for vote. Mr. Taylor.
Commissioner Frower,
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins,
Aye.
Chair Harvey.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Commissioners, item 3 on our agenda will be a presentation by Mr. Steve Burton. There he is. It's a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Blaine Burnett to guarantee improvements with the Maple Meadow subdivision. Mr. Burton, go ahead.
Hi, Commissioners. This normally would just be approved by the county engineer, but because it's more than $25,000, it has to go to you. This is basically just improvements in the Maple Meadows subdivision in Eden. It's essentially it's in the amount of $70,184.24. It's basically just for a shared private drive. Our engineers are requiring that they bond for those improvements, and then we'll give them their money back when it's installed.
Very good. Commissioner Jenkins, this is in your portfolio. Any questions or explanation?
Nope.
Great. Commissioner Frohr?
No?
Great. I'll entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we approve the contract by and between Weber County and Blaine Burnett for
Motion to-
improvements.
Motion to approve. Great. Accepted.
Second?
And second, I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
My motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Myers, This is a request for approval of contracts by between Weber County and the following property owners for the acquisition of property along 3600 West. This is a big deal. Those people would be Kenneth Hipwell, Gary and Tana Hipwell Family Trust, Garolyn H. Nelson and Janica K. Nelson, and Kim D. Nelson. Mr. Myers?
Commissioners, I'm excited to present to you today these contracts. It's a big milestone for us. 3600 West is a very important road to us. It's on our master plan to be an arterial road. And as such, we wanted to acquire the full right-of-way from these 4 individuals listed in front of you. Now, we did go through the process of acquiring this property through an acquisition agent. As such, appraisals were conducted on anything larger than a $10,000 purchase. And then an appraisal review was also performed on those appraisals as they were done. Our intent is to do a closing on all 4 of these at a title company so that we can do the proper research on the title, make sure we get that nailed down the way we want it for us as county property. Any questions for you gentlemen today?
Commissioner Jenkins? No. Commissioner Frohr?
No, other than, Gary, this has been a long time coming. I appreciate your work on this. And I guess I do have a question. So this then would leave no property that we in need of still acquiring?
In front of their homes. As we proceed further, as the road continues to develop further north, we will acquire that.
But for that section of road, we're covered?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, this nails it all down.
Commissioners, I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor the meeting, but I would like Mr. Myers to explain the process by which we are using now to acquire property in future subdivisions so that we don't have to keep doing this in the future. This is a shift in management style that we've taken over the last 2 or 3 years, and can you just explain how we're doing it now?
Very much so. Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. This was a little bit painful. We really should have acquired these properties earlier on as developments happened and properties were improved. Moving forward, as we allow properties to develop, as the landowners get approved, we will have them dedicate that right away to us as part of that improvements to the property. Then we won't be having to go back and acquire it as we did in this case. So hopefully that clears that up a little bit, Chair Harvey.
So to me, Commissioner, this represents a shift in process so that we're more efficient and we don't bind or place future commissions in a similar situation. So this, I think, represents good county government that's when it's unincorporated.
Very much
Commissioners, with the presentation being heard, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Myers.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Glad to get that done.
Me too. Thank you. Now on to item H, like hotel, is a request for a motion to adjourn our public meeting and convene a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. We are now in a public hearing. This is to discuss and/or take action on a county-initiated ordinance to amend various sections of the Weber County subdivision ordinance to encourage public street connectivity, to provide related amendments regarding the provision of street and lot development standards, to streamline the approval process, and to include general administrative and clerical amendments to create a more effective ordinance. Christy or Shelley, who's ever monitoring our Zoom account, if you'll please make sure that you mute those who are participating online. Charlie Ewert, you're a presenter here today. Will you please make that presentation?
I sure will. Thank you, Commissioners. Hope you guys had a great holiday weekend reading 90 pages of a staff report. I apologize for the length of that. Let me share my screen here and let's dive in. Hopefully we don't have to read 90 pages today, but I am more than happy to entertain how you guys may want to review this ordinance today. So the primary reason we're here, and we discussed this a little bit in work session a week or two ago, primary reason we're here is to add a paragraph in the ordinance, essentially, that allows county staff to work with developers to negotiate voluntary contributions for street connectivity. So if a developer comes in and proposes road alignment or road configuration that meets the best, highest and best use that they would consider for their property, they're entitled to do so under our existing ordinances and our existing rules. And in some cases, that doesn't meet the best street connectivity for the community. And so we want to give them the opportunity to realize an incentive in making better connections than what they would otherwise do, and work with the county planners and the county engineers to look at the connections of the community and figure out where streets could possibly connect. Essentially what this means is that, let me give you an example. We've got a development that is actually waiting on the passage of this ordinance to proceed. Their original proposal was 3 cul-de-sacs not lining up, so one cul-de-sac going to the east and one to the west and then another one to the east in succession from south to north along 4300 West, and with no connections beyond that. Their reasoning for that was because the cul-de-sac lots gives them the highest return. Now this is in a 40,000 square foot minimum lot size zone, and so they found that if they had the exclusivity of a cul-de-sac, they could sell some of those lots for more. However, as we were looking at that area, there's a really great opportunity for street connections instead of cul-de-sacs. And we realized that the developer has the opportunity to make a little bit more money on these cul-de-sacs, so maybe we can help them create an opportunity to make a little bit more money just overall, both by making connections that the communities will benefit from in the future, connecting neighborhoods to adjacent neighborhoods, but also making those connections for them and also making a little bit more money. So one of the suggestions that we have is to change our ordinance to allow a developer to use the base density calculation that we've previously adopted. We use base density calculation for determining what density is in a cluster subdivision or in a PRUD. So it's kind of a flexible tool to determine how many lots can come out of a subdivision. They can use that base density calculation with this proposal, but also they wouldn't have to remove the area that's within streets. What that means is that they can get a little bit smaller lot sizes in their development and potentially get a few more lots out of it. So let's just, for the sake of math, let's just say in the 40,000 square foot zone, that's just a standard acre. Let's say somebody has 40 acres. If you were to take the base density calculation, that would get them 40 homes if you don't remove the area that's going to be encumbered by streets. If they did a standard subdivision, it would just be whatever that 1 acre lot size is, and they wouldn't be able to count any of that acreage that's within streets to go towards their density. So if you have 40 acres and you build a whole bunch of streets to access your lots, and then you build 1 acre lots after that, you're not going to get 40 lots out of that. You're going to get probably 38 or 37, just because some of that acreage is going to be inside your streets. Adoption of this proposed section would allow them to get the full 40 out of it, even though they do have some streets in there. In the Ogden Valley, we've got another example. We had a 3-lot subdivision in a 3-acre zone. They had almost exactly 9 acres. They were in a location where a 4-way intersection for the future would be ideal. In fact, missing the opportunity for that 4-way intersection would potentially cut off a number of other landowners down the road from access to these streets. But it was in the landowner's best interest to divide this up into 3 3-acre parcels. If they were to dedicate any of that area for road space, they would have lost that 3rd lot. And so we were able to work with the landowner without this provision to essentially create a glorified driveway to access each of these 3 lots. These lots were deep, not along a roadway, but they were deep away from the roadway. So to create a glorified driveway, use all of the acreage within that driveway towards their lots. So they were able to get the 3 lots instead of 2. And then after creating their subdivision plat, they dedicated their glorified driveway to the county for future street space. So each of those resulting lots turned out to be 2.8 acres or something like that. And then there was space for the streets. And they were able to do that because we have an ordinance in our non-conforming chapter that says if you're creating a right-of-way, or if you're creating a street, you can make your lot smaller than what the zone requires by whatever that that amount in the street acreage is.
Well, Charlie, in this case, did they dedicate to the county 60-foot right-of-way with curb and gutter and et cetera?
They didn't do the curb
Sidewalk?
and, they didn't do the curb and gutter and sidewalk in this particular case. They did a deferral agreement for future curb and gutter.
Okay.
They did that. And it is the beginning of a road that will continue in that particular area, continue northward to other properties. And as more properties come in, we'd be looking at those additional improvements. We figured if it worked in that particular case to motivate the applicant to create a street connection, maybe this is something we could do across the board with other applicants. Now, this isn't a mandatory requirement. Applicants can still do the cul-de-sacs if they want to do so, but this is an opportunity for the developer to realize a little bit more money, as well as the county to realize better connections. So that's the purpose behind this. And I'm going to float right down to that section of the ordinance just so we can kind of look at it together, because there is a little bit of criteria that goes along with it. We just want to make sure we're doing what's in the best interest of the public. Apologize, bear with me. And it's just a small section of code. It's not a big section. Let's see. We're getting there. And in practice, it acts a lot like the lot average subdivision ordinance does, even though it's not lot averaging, okay? So it's actually a tool kind of like lot averaging, so we're calling it the connectivity incentivized subdivision. So basically, there is not an entitlement to this. So an applicant can volunteer, but the county is not obligated to approve it. So that's number one. And we would want to try and improve it whenever we've got great street connectivity. Base density incentives, so that's where you take the density calculation that's in the definitions, but you don't have to remove street right away from that calculation, which is up to 10% of the gross developable acreage. So we set up to 10% because as we look at some of these different zones, we know that 10% tends to be an average of what streets are when you're looking at the 1 acre and smaller zones. And so when you get down to like a 15,000 square foot zone, if you're getting enough streets in there for enough street frontage, you're actually getting closer to 12, 13, 14%. And as we talked to the Western Weber Planning Commission, who governs a lot in the Uinta Highlands area, they wanted to make sure it wasn't an unnecessary amount of bonus density that was being given for this. On top of that, we also applied flexible lot standards. So imagine this 3-lot subdivision that I mentioned in the Ogden Valley, where they made their lots just a little bit smaller to provide for a 66-foot wide right-of-way, right? If we're looking out in some of these other zones, the S1, the F5, the AV3, FV3, A3, A2, and A1 zone, what we've done in the lot averaging for these zones is we've said you can average your lots as long as you don't reduce the density more than, or the lot sizes by more than essentially 50% of what the lot sizes are. So in the 1 acre zone, you won't reduce your lot sizes more than 20,000 square feet each. And what that does is, as we're looking at street connections, optimal street connections, aligning these streets may create kind of weird areas where it's hard to put a 40,000 square foot lot or even a 35,000 square foot lot in. But a 20,000 square foot lot might fit really well in there. So it gives them the opportunity, as the planning director and the county engineer is looking at best street connections, for the applicant to still get good and sellable lots in some of these weird corners of their subdivisions. But as we got down into some of the smaller lot areas, we began realizing, and this is especially the Ogden Valley, or excuse me, the Western Weber Planning Commission said, You know, when you're looking in the 15,000 square foot zone and you're dropping that to 7,500 square feet, that's a big cut. And that could look really weird. And so maybe we don't allow for that big of a cut. Maybe we allow them to reduce down to 80%. And so we did that with some of the smaller zones, as you can see here. So you can't reduce down to 50%, but you can still reduce it to 80% in those smaller zones. And then we put some criteria here on preferred public street layout, just to give the planning director and the county engineer a little bit of guidance on what is preferred. So street and neighborhood connectivity for both motorized and non-motorized uses, efficiency of street routes in terms of distance traveled, reduced block length, enhancing pedestrian circulation and safety, supporting four-way intersections over three-way intersections where appropriate, and superior street alignment that will create best community outcomes. So just giving a little bit of criteria so that it's not everybody, it's not a free-for-all. There's actually some outcomes that we're really trying to get implemented in our communities. That is the meat and potatoes of this proposal. As we got into the meat and potatoes, we started looking at some of the other sections of code that also needed to be changed to make this possible. And there were a lot of sections of code that were left wanting in a lot of different ways. And as I started peeling back those layers, it just got worse and worse as I peeled. Is pulling a thread on a sweater. And so I saw a lot of opportunities for changes in these other sections. So some of these other sections that you see proposed changes in, most of it is just clerical. It's helping us administer the ordinance in an easier, more efficient way, and kind of closing some of the loopholes or opportunities for errors. But there are a few things in here that are procedural in nature. So we wanted to make sure we cut down on a lot of the fluff that isn't necessary when we're looking at process. For example, something that you'll find in here is hillside development. When it comes to a building permit, there may be a need for specific eyes on hillside development review. And hillside development review is on properties that are an average slope of 25% or more. When it comes to a subdivision, however, the hillside development review can be grafted right into that process. There doesn't need to be a separate application. There doesn't need to be a separate board. There doesn't need to be any of that. It just be right. We already do it, basically. We're looking at getting geotech reports and then sometimes geologic hazards reports. There's no need to create this special board, which, in working with our attorneys, anytime your ordinance creates a board, you've got to follow the Open Public Meetings Act as well. It just creates a lot of unnecessary governmental steps that we can do just in our standard reviews. So those are the types of processes that we're recommending that we kind of cut down on. One of the things that we talked about in work session, and let me scroll back up, is who the land use authority is for subdivisions. And for small subdivisions, we talked about that being the planning director. Your current ordinance kind of gives, there's a couple of different sections that are a little contradictory on that, and so we clarify that by saying that a preliminary subdivision and a final subdivision is one step, not two steps, and can be approved by the land use authority, who is the planning director, and that's a small subdivision. A large subdivision, however, let's run up here to that. Excuse me. The large subdivision right now says that a preliminary subdivision plan has to go to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission is the land use authority for a preliminary subdivision plan. But then once you get to final, it requires Planning Commission recommendation and County Commission approval. Now, we chatted a little bit about, at our work session with you guys, about the possibility of cutting one of those steps out, going to the County Commission as final approval. And what you guys mentioned was you like being involved in the process. And so I apologize. Let me find that spot here just so we can kind of get that out of the way. Here we are. I realized over the weekend after I submitted this to you guys for review that I failed to address this paragraph to ensure that it's clear that the county commission is the final reviewing authority for a final subdivision plat. And after I forgot to make that adjustment, so this just makes it for, this just gives the planning commission the authority to approve a final subdivision plat unless the county engineer and the planning director have determined that there is a public street there that doesn't provide a commensurate public benefit. Then it goes to the county commission, because you guys would be able to say, no, we're not taking a public street, or yes, we are taking a public street here. What I recommended originally to you guys was to just let the planning commission make the decision on these things except for public streets, and what I heard back was you guys like to be involved in the process. And so I want to make sure that it's clear here. I have an alternative that wasn't in your packet, but I have right here for you to look at. That gives that alternative. One of my recommendations is I do recommend that we cut down in the process. The county commission sets up the rules, and once the rules are set, the landowners have the right, authority, obligation, and entitlement to follow those rules and get approved, regardless of who the approval authority is, whether it be the county commission, whether it be the planning commission, or whether it be the planning director. And so my suggestion still is that we cut somewhere from that process so that we're not spending an extra couple of weeks to get things through the approval process. To me, it seems like an unnecessary couple of weeks, but I am sensitive to the desire for the county commission to be involved, at least just to be informed. And so with this language here, what I am suggesting is that we add to that last little paragraph it's still the planning commission that is the land use authority for a large subdivision. However, the county commission shall be the land use authority after recommendation from the applicable planning area planning commission for final plat approval under the following circumstances. Number one, the final plat includes a public street that poses a financial burden on the county that the county engineer and county planning director have determined does not provide a commensurate public benefit. So that was in the previous version. And then number two, this is new from what's in your packet, that within 14 calendar days after preliminary subdivision approval of a particular subdivision, a county commissioner informs the county planning division director that the county commission shall be the land use authority for the final plat of the subdivision. So what this does is it gives the opportunity for the planning director to report to the county commission after preliminary approval the subdivisions that have gone through the process of approval with the planning commission. So they'll bring that to you guys, whether it be at a work session or the planning director will bring it to you in a work meeting here and say, all right, these have gone through preliminary approval. Do any of these subdivisions merit you guys, the county commission, as the land use authority? And then from there, you guys could take a look and say, yes, we want to see this one and this one. We could see some public concerns with these. Otherwise, you could choose the ones, or by not selecting ones, those ones would then just stay on the track with the county planning commission being the final decision maker there. So gives you the opportunity after prelim to say, we want to be involved in these ones, but also gives you the opportunity to fast track some of the other ones. Any questions about that? Any concerns about that?
Mr. Chair.
Please, go ahead.
So we had this discussion in our planning process with you some time ago, Charlie. And I almost hate to make it too easy on us as a commission. I like to see large lot subdivisions. I think it's proper that there's pressure on us as a commission to approve them, to look at them, to be involved with them. This allows them, if they're simple enough, to be us to opt out of them, so to speak. And I don't know. I don't know if that's if we're skirting our responsibilities. I'll just say, be frank about it. And I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. I've always been a person that was directly involved in these things through planning in the city, through being a city councilman or a mayor, and I expected that we would always be involved in those here. Charlie brings up a good point. If it's simple enough, why do we want to waste our time doing that? Just to let it go through. But I don't view it as a real waste of our time. I think it's always been our responsibility, and I don't mind continuing to do that. So, I don't know. I just thought I'd bring that up. I don't know quite what to think of this, Charlie. I'll be honest with you. You kind of got me second guessing myself right now.
I don't mean to do that at all. And to that effect, we can very easily change this to say that the Land Use Authority is the county commission after, and we could use this language here, after recommendation from the applicable planning area planning commission. And if we were to say it like that, that's exactly the process that we have right now.
So let me tell you what ends up happening here. On one hand, if you don't look at it, you say, well, we don't want to slow it down. But on the other hand, if they are requiring small changes or things that are important, I think it's our responsibility to look at things and try to be consistent. It's like our citizenry expects us to be involved with them. And anyway, that's one of the reasons I kind of feel the way I do about some of these things. So I don't know. Not sure.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
So, Charlie, the way that your first proposal talked about, and this addresses Commissioner Jenkins' thought process, which, I agree with, that we have that responsibility, but we're just doing it at a different venue. The way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is we would examine those preliminary plats during a work session, and then so the time that we would examine those, and if we had any concerns or issues with particular plat, we'd say, look, we're the Land Use Authority, this needs to come before us.
That's right.
So I can see some benefit. To me, it's just a matter of, I like doing these in work session.
Yeah.
And I think we get, at least for me, speaking personally, I get more information and have the, ability to ask questions during work sessions a lot of time we do here. So,
right.
I can live either way, but I like the idea of them coming to work session with a preliminary plat, and then we have the option to say yay or nay. I can also live with, hey, everything comes, but I would say I'd like to keep the provision in there that we address them in a work session, and then we deal with it as they come. So
I agree with that.
So that's, and I guess that's really, so I probably support the first verbiage you had, which they all come to us in work session, and then we pick and choose which come to us in a public hearing.
Perfect.
So, but I can live either way.
Great. Super.
Okay. As far as the rest of the proposal goes, you see a lot of red line because there's a lot of unnecessary words. And like I told you guys when we were working on this in work session, we probably put enough words in when we worked on our water ordinance that we should probably balance that out a little bit by taking some of the unnecessary stuff out. You see a little bit of green line, and the green line that you see in there is mostly just stuff that has been moved around so that it works better in the ordinance. There are two things that are being proposed to be changed with a subdivision application. Right now, we already require a preliminary title report to be submitted with the subdivision application, but the application submittal requirements of your code doesn't say that. So we're adding that one in. And then number two, we're adding in a street connectivity plan requirement at application. Basically where the applicant can say, we've looked at all the streets in the area, we're looking at the streets that we're proposing, and we're showing how these can all work together. Whether or not they choose to do the incentivized connection or they choose to do their own thing, we still would like to kind of see what the private market would say as far as street connectivity
So
goes.
let me interrupt you there, Charlie. Mayor, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I like cul-de-sacs, and we had this discussion on our work meeting.
Yeah.
I think they create wonderful little communities. But to Charlie's point, I do understand about if you make those cul-de-sacs too long, then they create dangers for emergency services and things such as that. So there is a point where you kind of have to draw the line. And I think it's very appropriate what you're suggesting, that we look at street connectivity. I think that's absolutely appropriate, and I'm very supportive of the concept.
Great. Thank you.
Well said.
Okay, that is my presentation. Any questions or comments about the changes that you guys have seen?
Commissioners, any more comments for Mr. Ewert before we turn to before we go into public comments?
I might just make a comment.
Please.
So, Charlie, I like where you're going with this. The first thing is, I think as we grow as a county, connectivity with roads becomes more important, not only for automobiles, but for bikes. We see a lot more people on bikes, other type of scooters, if you will. So I think and you made a good compromise here where this becomes an option for the developer. I like the idea that the developers typically know what they're doing and gives them the option to say, look, what's best? We're not, some counties would mandate this and force it down the throat. I'm glad we're not doing that. I like leaving the developer and having their perspective in that. So I support that. I totally support, I look at the red versus the green on that. Anytime we can eliminate unnecessary verbiage that complicates it for the public and for our staff, it's a good move. And so, I had a rule in the legislature, and didn't always work, that anytime you propose a bill, you should get rid of 2. But, the Senate, they didn't think that way. They always thought they're going to do
them all the time.
Sounds to me like you had the influence of railroad crossings on your mind, too.
Anyway, that's my comments.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well then, Commissioners, let's move to item 3 on our agenda, which is public comments. Are there any persons in the public that would like to address the Commission? Seeing none, we'll move to online. Ms.
Yes, I
Hallisey?
would.
Ms. Hallisey? Okay, great. If you would introduce yourself, say the city by which you live, and then limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. Go ahead.
My name is Gary Haas, and I live in Eden, Utah, 5226 East Piners Drive. Thank you, Commissioners, for the work you do. It's a tough job. And I would like to address a road that was put on hold back in 2007 from Howard Schmidt's development, Eagles Landing, to Highway 138. And basically, the economy took a downturn. The county gave him an exemption to continue the hard surface road. The base is there. And it's time now that the economy is good to confirm and have him finish the road thoroughfare. It would take a lot of traffic off of Elkhorn Drive, which runs next to my place. Years ago, Mr. Lowell Peterson lived on that road, and he was against it. He since passed away. And now that road surely needs to be completed from Elk Ridge Trail down to Highway 138 in Weber County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. Are there any others online that would like to comment?
Just a minute.
Yes.
Give me your name.
My name is Bonnie Haas, and I'm Gary's wife. And I have really had a hard time with the traffic going up and down Elkhorn Drive. It's become a thoroughfare. And I'm standing out there with a sign that says 30 miles per hour, please. And they're just 50, 60 miles an hour. And it's just gotten so terrible. And until we get that exit road out, which would be wonderful, I'm proposing 30 miles an hour is actually too fast up here. And of course, people go faster than that. I'm suggesting that we probably move it down to 20 or 25 at the most. And maybe removable speed bumps all along Elkhorn Drive, because I've had so many people stop me and say it's gotten totally out of hand up here. And the sheriffs try to help, but they don't show up that often. And then people slow down, but that's about the only time they do. And I'm just proposing a lower speed limit up here and some speed bumps that would, especially just going up the hill right to John Lewis's new retreat. They just scream up and down this road, and it's very, very hard. I can't even sit outside and have a conversation, because we have like at least 10 cars a minute. There are so many people that live up here now, and some of the homes up in Trappers can seat 30 people, and so that's just one home. And there are so many cars that keep going up and down this road that I really think that we should lower the speed limit and put some removable speed bumps in there to slow people down, and I appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Are there any others online that would like to comment?
None that I see, sir.
Thank you. Hearing none. Commissioners, we'll take action on we'll have I entertain a request for a motion to adjourn our public hearing and reconvene a public meeting.
So moved.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Let's move to item number 5, to take action on this public hearing, which is, again, I'll restate that action, which is a request for approval of an ordinance to amend the various sections of the Weber County subdivision ordinance to encourage public street connectivity, to provide related amendments regarding provision to street and lot development standards, and to streamline the approval process, and to include general administrative and clerical amendments to create more efficient ordinance. Mr. Ewert, before we do any more dialogue, can you address the comments made by Gary and Bonnie Haas?
I sure can. They those comments aren't specific to this ordinance proposal, but I can show you. I believe I know where they're talking about. I've got it pulled up. So here's Eagle Ridge Trail and the Schmidt property.
Charlie?
Oh, sorry.
Share.
Let's try that one more time.
While those comments may not pertain to this and may be out of order, I would like to let them get an answer from you, Charlie. Thank you for entertaining it.
Absolutely, happy to. Okay, we there? Perfect. Here's Elk Ridge Trail here, and here's the road that is proposed to come down. So it comes down through this land here. This is Mr. Schmidt's property, and then connects into Highway 158 right there. It is a proposal. There is a development agreement that was approved or reapproved with a time extension. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago that gave them an additional 10 years to get this project done. And I'm not entirely certain what is holding the project up. I do believe the market is there to get this project going, but really we're just waiting for the landowner at this point.
So hold on.
Elk Ridge through.
So he had 10 years to get it done, and it's been 10 years, right?
Sorry, they had a period of time, I believe from 2007 onward, and that time expired. They came to the county commission to extend that time a year or two ago. Actually, it might have been 2 or 3 years ago, and their development agreement was extended another 10 years. And so they've got a few more years before that development agreement expires. When they re-upped that development agreement, part of the conditions of giving them the additional 10 years was that they build essentially an emergency egress for that entire subdivision along this line here, which also doubles as a pedestrian pathway.
Is that egress in place?
It is. It's built and it's in place. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And then Elkhorn Drive is this road that comes in here, comes to this cul-de-sac, and then comes out and stubs to the adjacent property over here. There are actually a few locations where more connections can be made, including as it comes down around here and connects down into this area here, or up and around this way, and also comes down to the same location. And from there, we could see the potential of other connections. But I think specifically to the speaker's concerns, both of their concerns, the lack of this connection here, I think, is probably pushing a lot of folks onto Elkhorn, which would push a lot of people coming up into here to connect over to Highway 158. So once this area is more complete, I think you'll see a lot of that traffic be reduced. As far as reducing the speed limit, we've got the county engineer in the room. Usually when you go to change the speed limit, you need to do a speed warrant study. And so just from all the discussions I've had with Gary about it, if you do a speed warrant study and it warrants a reduction in speed, at that point, you could potentially change that speed limit. I think the standard default for a residential street is 25 miles an hour if it's not otherwise posted. So we'd have to pay for a speed warrant study in order to determine difference in speed on that road.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead, Mr. Commissioner Jenkins.
So questions I have on this, would you leave that map up?
You got that, Bill? There we go.
There you go. The questions I have on this, as I sit and look at this, I think this is very appropriate, what you're doing, and the fact that I don't remember extending this deferral agreement, and I've been here 3 years, 3.5 years. So
might have been a little bit longer than that. I'll have to go back and look at the
I just
actual
wondered.
date.
But anyway, this Elkhorn Drive, this all dead ends in here, right?
This whole
there's
thing,
no
yes.
through streets out of the whole place right now.
That's correct.
So how do we approve these kind of agreements when out on 7500 West we can't do that?
That's a great question. A question that I think I started asking when I was first hired in 2014, including the connections that's going up to Powder Mountain.
Right.
A lot of stuff going on single accesses. That's a question of the day. Now, what we are doing...
Hold on now. He says the question of the day. You just got ready to jump to another thing. Well, I want to tie you down here.
I want to give you...
Answer my question. How do we approve this when there's not another access? When we won't allow another developer to even start now,
right?
Because of it, and yet this is the whole subdivision's divided, and I agree that they have other access planned, but we just give them a deferral agreement, and it's probably, I'll bet, 3 years into it, so there's 7 years out that that they don't have to do that, and we're not requiring that. How do we do that? Because it's not fair.
I agree.
Agree with that.
I agree. I don't have an answer for you.
So you didn't personally do it?
No.
Commissioners before us do that?
My understanding of most of the dead-end issues that we're seeing came before. Yes, come before this commission, before your current staff.
I see Sean out there just about ready to jump out of his seat. Do you have an answer to that, Sean?
I will stay here. These are planning decisions that were made decades ago.
Quite a while ago.
That have led us to where we are now. Now, we are, as Charlie is saying, we are making those changes and we're doing things differently, but we have to live with what was done.
Yeah.
Well, all I know is I think it's appropriate what we've done up here to allow them to develop. And as time goes on, they are fixing these issues. But if it's fair for them to develop under this kind of an arrangement, it's really fair for the people on 7500 West to develop under a similar arrangement. If we need to put a time on there that it has to be done in so many years, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
An arrangement made, because and that's kind of the way development happens. And where we now have 2 developments on that street wanting to do it, it's like, can't we somehow come to an agreement or an arrangement, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
Something in there.
And you'll see an agreement, an arrangement coming forward, at least for one of the 2 developments on 7500. I've got a meeting set up with the other developer on Friday to hopefully come to the same kind of a arrangement, which...
Even if they have to price share for a second...
egress.
Egress,
Yep.
right, exactly.
And we were actually speaking with another developer in this area who's looking at property here to
When you say here, you're talking about the Upper Valley?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm circling the area on the map, which isn't up on the screen right now.
There we go, that helps us.
Property right here in this area that's looking at the potential of making these connections, which I think is really important. There are the subject I was gonna jump to is how do we fix the problem? As you look at the small area plan for the Eden area, which will be coming forward in the next few months, as well as you look at the general plan for the area, we do show in the general plan a connection from this cluster of homes tying back to 158 over here, which if Howard Schmidt does create that connection, that will be one. But then you still have all this area that still is a dead end. At the end, of Elkhorn, which the small area plan for Eden will take essentially one of these existing roads that are in here and potentially create the potential for an extension up. And we chatted about that in work session. Oh, it's probably been about a year with you guys about the connection here, as well as the connection in the Liberty area between, I believe it's Sheep Creek, and there's another development along the river over in here to essentially create an extension here on the general plan or area plan. And if we do that, we're at least planning for the connection in the future. So as we see new development coming forward, we can say, okay, you can develop, but there's that road, you got to go make some extensions there. Help make those connections. And hopefully we can do the same thing in 7500 West.
Thanks, Charlie.
You bet. Any other questions for me?
No, having learned, continuing to learn on this, Commissioner, I may or may not have been, I don't remember the extension specifically part of it, but I think once the agreement's made in this kind of a situation, extension for 10 years, I could see 1 or 2 years. Philosophically, I don't know that I would have, but there was a different person in charge of that portfolio back then too. And there was a lot of stuff that I don't remember,
Sure.
so.
Well, Commissioner Harvey, whether you were or you weren't, the extension is to allow that developer to have their entitlements preserved for a period of time. It's not to force the developer to install something within a period
No, but
of time.
the developer makes an agreement, and you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. That's we've learned that in a lot of places. That's how it goes.
Right.
So to preserve the right is another thing in my mind.
Right.
You do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. So to go another 10 years, this is tough for not just the Haws, but the other folks that are along that road. To see it now from a different vantage point or viewpoint, there's a lot of density right there, and I'm with Commissioner Jenkins on this. How would we do that where we're not doing it now? So I think it's been a cause for good discussion on this.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve H2 as presented to us today on the changes made to our ordinance on connectivity and what do we call them?
Connectivity and amendments for provisional for street and lot development standards.
Well, but in there was the cul-de-sacs. Yeah, cul-de-sacs and street connectivity.
Very good.
As presented to. So I'd make that motion.
Great. That's ordinance 2021-23. Is there a second?
I'd second that with a comment.
Please.
If I might. So I think as we look at that subdivision up at Wolf Creek, it's a perfect example of what connectivity, what can lead to bad policy when we approve it without putting in some thought into connections. That particular subdivision, Elk Ridge Drive, I'm on there occasionally once or twice a month. When I was in the probably 10 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, I received a number of calls for the same situation. Why wasn't that extension ever put in? And we know the answer. That 10-year agreement's been around for a while, Commissioner, quite a while. But so I think this is a good example of what we should be looking for is putting teeth in the ordinance and the 10-year requirement I also struggle with. There needs to be a time frame, and it's probably not after 300 homes are up there when that road goes through. It's time for that road. The issue that the Haws bring up, and I've chatted with them at least online, is a real concern. I've talked to the sheriff about it. I think a traffic study is probably warranted. I know the sheriff has spent some time up there at that four-way stop, but without an additional ingress for these particular areas, there's a lot of homes that are dumping onto that one road. So unfortunately, we can't cure that. That was before our time, but I think we can, with this ordinance, look for the future, making sure this doesn't happen again, and working again on the 7500 West. I'm in favor of doing that, but we need to make sure that there's time limits in place that we don't get into this situation. I think this tells us that, renewing these 10 years agreement every 10 years doesn't work in some cases.
This takes a lot of pressure off the other crossing of the golf carts up there. It'd take a lot of pressure off of
Yeah.
the homes up there, because they would just go in another way. That's all there's to it.
Yeah, I hear on occasion that, people crossing that road with their golf cart sometimes come in near harm's way.
Oh, I was with Commissioner Jenkins. Of course, I was on the 90% kill side and barely, just, holy mackerel.
It's amazing. Sometimes people, just out of perception, lose their cool, and I don't understand how that happens.
Well, you're not on the 90% kill side.
Yeah, we had plenty of time there.
I have a motion and a second. This ordinance 2021-23. Mr. Taylor?
Commissioner Frower?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move on to item I, like India, on our agenda item. Commissioner comments.
Hold on. I did not make a motion to approve the entire
That's what I was wondering.
package. I made a motion to approve the first half of that package.
Then I think I'd like to go back just in clarity.
What's the first half?
Mr. Taylor?
Item H2. The public, and I stated that specifically, on the street connectivity and
cul-de-sacs.
Cul-de-sacs. Well, the second part of that is separate from that.
I didn't understand that to be the motion. That's not what I
Yeah.
voted for.
Okay, so
I'd like to,
yeah.
Chris, how do we do this now?
And that is a question that I had when I heard the motion, it was related to the connectivity and the cul-de-sacs, but there was a remainder of the motion.
That's right.
I mean, a remainder of the item, which wasn't actually addressed in the motion.
Then with respect to do-overs, so to speak, and we can do that.
Yes, we're in the same meeting, and so if we need to do a motion for reconsideration.
Is there a motion for reconsideration?
moved.
Motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great, there we go. Now,
Okay,
would you,
let me make that again.
will you please?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I want to make a motion to split the request today.
Very good.
Yes.
Please go ahead. And thank you for
in that
restating.
split, I make the motion to approve the first half of it, which has to do with street connectivity and cul-de-sacs.
There is
that. I make a motion to approve.
May we change that? Stand by for a second. May we change that in that motion, Mr. Crockett?
I guess the one question that I would have is, do you have enough to determine which portions of the ordinance we would need to?
Before I do a second, I want to know what we're excluding.
Let me pull this up, make sure I'm understanding as well. Hang on
Well,
one
I
second.
appreciate that. I didn't
Yeah,
understand.
that's okay. Well, so let's talk to that. The part we're excluding is the second part written down there, where it says subdivision ordinance encouraging, provide, let's see, to streamline the process, to include general administrative and clerical amendments to create a more efficient ordinance. That's the part that I've excluded. I want to address that separately. Commissioner Floyd.
Okay?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess my question would be, is that clean enough for you to know which parts to keep on? And
Charlie,
which
we're
parts to
waiting
take
for your
off?
answer before we.
Okay, I think so. I'm pulling it up here just to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, let me go back to share the screen. Okay. Bill, could we get that up on the screen here?
You sharing?
I think so. Says I am. Perfect. Okay. So we've got connectivity, incentivized subdivision. That's the section that is specific to your recommendation. Okay. So it's section 106.24.3, but none of the other changes. Okay. Perfect. I understand that.
That's the motion.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. You're satisfied with the explanation?
Yeah, that section
Mr.
right there.
Ford?
Yep.
Charlie, do you have enough then, as the question was asked by the council, do you have enough then to move forward with the information that you've received on this?
I do, yes.
Very good. Then, Mr. Taylor, with that, let's have you call for, this will be ordinance 2021-23.
Commissioner Frower,
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins, Chair Harvey.
Aye. Is that good? Great.
Another motion?
Okay, great.
So,
Hold on.
oh,
Can we make another motion, Mr. Crockett, now that we've divided this?
If it's pertaining to the same item that's been listed on the agenda, I think you would be okay if you need to bifurcate some issues.
Very good. That's what I think that's where he's headed.
and that's the purpose of a division.
Thank you.
Okay. So the question I have now that I'd like you to explain to me is when we got into this a few minutes ago, you said this would be pretty easy. Just by adding this here, this would change it. Can you physically show me that?
I sure
in
can.
the ordinance?
In fact, as you were chatting, I put...
I'm sorry to get a little complicated
Oh, that's
here,
great.
but that's how you wade through this stuff. It's important.
Okay.
I know it seems like just a lot of mush, but if you don't get it right,
No, this is important, so we don't
yeah.
Well, it's
perpetuate bad things.
It's a lot of detail, and so I appreciate that. Okay, so let me pull open. Okay, forgive me for just a second. Let me bounce back up to that section, and I'll show you the differences. Because as we were chatting, I went and made the changes in the proposed mode, so you could see what it would be. Okay, so Part B here, it's taking its time getting there. There we go. Let's see if I could zoom in on that a little bit for you. This is how it's written in your packets.
Right.
Okay. This, come on. Hard to do when you're on Zoom, sorry. This is how it was written in the Word document that you saw and how it could otherwise be changed in the ordinance. So you've got a Part 1 and a Part 2 now in this paragraph.
A final plat includes a public street that you're blocked on our side.
The names of the people on Zoom are blocked on that right side. If you could just maybe slide that up, Bill, sort of minimize that. Okay, that'll work.
I got it, Bill.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Thank you.
That's word on the county that the county engineer and planning commission director have determined does not provide a commensurate public benefit. Within 14 calendar days after preliminary subdivision approval of a particular subdivision, the county commissioner informs the county planning division director that the county commission shall be the land use authority for the final plat of the subdivision. So that requires a county commissioner within 2 weeks, 14 days, to give.
Just notice that they're going to be the,
Hold on, the county planning division director, that's you?
That would be Rick.
Rick Grover.
Rick, okay. So it requires the county commission to take a positive. An action.
That's correct.
It requires us to take an action, and without that action, it automatically goes to the land use authority.
Which would be the planning commission.
To the planning commission.
Correct.
Makes them the land use authority.
That's right. And so under this provision, what this would do is give you the opportunity to direct the planning director just on a standing basis to report to you in work session or in email or in however direction you guys want to see it, what items have received, what subdivisions have received preliminary approval by the planning commission. And any of you three would have the exact same authority to say, Director Grover, I want the county commission to be the land use authority for this subdivision.
Does it just take one? Yeah, one?
Just one.
So, commissioners, I'm not quite sure what to think of this. I understand this would have put us in a position where just by saying nothing, it would require them to make the decision. And frankly, if it was a simple, plain forward, why not? You know, why burden someone to come back to here, especially when they're working with the Planning Commission on a regular daily and meeting basis. It streamlines it.
Well, other than the way that that's written with 1 and 2, anything with a public street keeps us still with, if it's a public street, it automatically comes to us. The only subdivisions that we would have to weigh in on to come to us would be those without a public street.
So a little bit different. It'd be a public street that imposes a burden that the planning director and the engineer doesn't determine is commensurate with the.
I can say, how can you have subdivisions without a street in it?
What's a burden? I mean, to me, a burden would be we have to snowplow it. So I guess that's my question is, what would you actually call a burden?
So the burden being commensurate, what we've done, think back to when we looked at private streets. Under private streets, we said if it is a street, for example, that's crossing a geologic hazard, or is a cul-de-sac that creates no public benefit whatsoever, those streets could easily be determined to be essentially a burden on the taxpayer with no public benefit.
Well, I could argue the fact that it's in our Planning Commission's presence is a burden.
Sure.
Because it is costing the county financially a little bit of money.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I put commensurate to the public benefit. And so most streets, in my opinion, as a planner in general, is that a street should be public if it can be, because public streets provide a public benefit. But there are a few instances when they do not provide a public benefit, especially when we have to keep paying to fix a geologic hazard or a dead-end street or something to that effect.
So, Charlie, go put that screen up again that showed that 1 and 2.
And we could tweak this language.
So if we left B in, Mr. Chair, if I might.
Please.
If we left B in, eliminated 1 and 2, that's really the status quo, that everything comes to us.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Eliminate 1 and 2, and essentially, let's see, however, so where it says however, for a subdivision other than a small subdivision, the county commission shall be the land use authority after recommendation from the applicable planning area planning commission for final approval, and don't say under the final.
So other than small subdivisions that we do now, basically leaves it the status quo.
Right.
Are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah. I'd vote for that in a minute.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to make a motion.
Please. I just didn't want to burden you.
Yeah. So,
I mean, you know.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve, we're going to call the presentation on that ordinance as presented by Mr. Ewert with the elimination of B, and we refer to the code B1 and 2.
Okay.
So it would basically, small lot stays in, anything else, anything other than small lots comes to us.
Great.
And
Commissioners, would you be comfortable if I work with our attorneys to just fine tune it to make sure it says what we need it to?
There might just be some language following that needs to be
as long as it's consistent throughout. But so the motion would be small lots are still approved by staff. Anything other than small lots, regardless, come here.
Okay. Good.
I'm fine with that.
Me too.
Perfect.
Okay, that's my motion.
Mr. Crockett, this is a...
And I'll second that.
Great. We have a motion and a second. I'll recognize those. Is this a new ordinance? Hold on.
Would you like to make?
Is it okay if I question?
Please, go ahead.
Just for our sakes, is this a motion to approve the rest of that, how many pages was it?
90.
90-page ordinance with that change, in addition to what Commissioner Jenkins already moved to approve?
Yes, it is. That's the part that I want to, yeah.
And my second is also.
Yeah.
Good. Very good.
Including all the red strikeouts that eliminate the,
Then this would be a motion to change ordinance 2021-23 as was just approved, or to modify, amend
Really, that's what we're doing. We're approving the ordinance, eliminating those two paragraphs.
That's right. That's
So-
what we're doing.
We're going to do a roll call on this then, so you have that. Okay, Mr. Taylor?
A clarification question. So is this an additional adjustment to ordinance 2.3, or is this,
I would keep it all as one ordinance, and we would just make sure that the minutes reflect all of the changes accurately. I would consider this.
Yeah, I think
just-
we've got one ordinance.
That's the way we understand it.
We eliminate B1 and 2 as applied to that particular ordinance.
okay, so this is a second vote on the second part of ordinance 2021-23.
That's what I would say. I would recommend just having it all in one ordinance. I mean, there's a specific
I think
procedure
I think it's just
follow,
a
but
substitute
I think
motion.
we can make the minutes clear enough, yeah.
So,
Even though we,
question on the motion now.
Go ahead.
So on B there, the last sentence you were talking about, however, subdivision other than a small shall, you're moving it so fast I can hardly read, shall be the land use authority after recommendations of the applicable planning area planning commission for the final, yeah, actually, that works out great. I love that. That's good.
I think that's what we're after.
Okay.
Let me propose a small tweak right here. I'm going to let you read it right now. Try that paragraph from the beginning.
Land use authority designated. The land use authority for final plat approval of a subdivision other than a small subdivision is defined by section 102.220 is this land use code is the county commission after recommendation from an applicable planning area planning commission. The land use authority for the final plat approval for the small subdivision is the county planning division director.
I like it.
Thank you, Commissioner Faur.
Okay, so we have just item B as it reads, as I just read into the minutes. So, Mr. Taylor, go ahead.
Commissioner Faur,
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins,
Aye, with a thank you for being workable on this.
Chair Harvey.
Aye, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ebert,
Commissioners.
Mr. Erickson, Mr. Crockett, Mr. Hatch, Matt in the back, appreciate having you here. Sean, Christie, Bill, we appreciate all you. Leanne. Okay, item number I is commissioner comments. Comments, commissioners?
I think I've said enough of mine today.
Okay.
I'd be glad to say, you know, this is how you do it at the state. It's not all good, right what we do down there, but we talk about it. And I love the fact that we sit and talk about this and work it out.
Yeah.
So I appreciate both of you on that, and I feel very comfortable about the decisions we've made.
Yeah, good
So thank you.
decisions.
Great, very good, thank you very much. With that, I'll entertain a motion for the last item.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Adjourned.